and then just go right down the middle.
That way, yeah.
Yeah. So,
okay. Well, paying attention to your thing here.
A national conservation organization called American Rivers designated the Chattahoochee River as the most endangered urban river in North America.
This river below the city had been septic, filled with bacteria, and off limits to everyone. It was so awful and had been that way for decades.
Well, I'll just start by saying Sally was the face of the river, and she painted a picture of a clean, healthy river. I talked about sewers. I took the other approach.
I was trying to paint a picture of what could be in a healthy river, that this river below the city, that we could bring it back to life. The city's story has been pretty miraculous.
I think most people assume that some government agency is monitoring public waterways and that public health is being protected. And the reality is,
you gotta have someone that cares. You gotta have someone that's forcing the issue with regulators, or they will do the minimum.
Nobody owns the water. It's our collective responsibility to steward it.
There are women almost in every community who are the keepers of the place.
I think there's something inherent with women that we are focused on nurturing, we're focused on place, we're focused on helping our families and our communities make connections, giving a voice for nature, for rivers, for forests.
Can this river be saved?
Absolutely. I wouldn't have this job if I didn't think we could do it.
New census numbers show Metro Atlanta is the fourth fastest growing metro area in the country.
To put this into perspective, there now are more people in Metro Atlanta than Ireland, Denmark, and Norway.
Since my family moved to Atlanta in the mid-1950s, I have seen so much change. Lenox Square and Phipps Plaza were forests right near the creek where I grew up. Highway 400 had not been built on top of the hill behind my house. The river hasn't changed, and yet we've got more and more people demanding more of her. It was 1 million people, now it's 5 million people the river has to sustain. Taking away our treated wastewater, assimilating that, taking it on down to other communities. Of course, Atlanta was founded in the 1800s because it was a terminus for railroads. No one was thinking about how big this metro area with no geographic boundaries might grow. So they didn't focus on the fact that the river is so small, that there's no other major city in this country that has such a small watershed or land area to capture the rainwater to bring into the river past the city.
This is sort of a stray comment, you can use it or not, and it doesn't really fit into a particular story, but I've always thought about it with her. I remember we were taking a trip somewhere once, flying over an island, And she looked out the window and pointed and says, "Where do you think all the poop goes?" And that was just such like a classic Sally, like thinking about the infrastructure, thinking about the water, and where the human impact on the water, like how that works. Most people don't think about that. You just look at a beautiful island and you just want to be on the beach. And Sally's thinking about, where does all this shit go?
The song of the Chattahoochee is a sad one these days. If a river could cry, you'd probably hear the plaintive wail of the Chattahoochee. For it's in pain, it's polluted. It's been that way for a long time. And times, well, while times are a-changin', for the Chattahoochee, that change is slow, and the pain runs deep.
The waste that you see here, Carolyn, is approximately 3 million gallons a day of partially treated industrial waste from the Lockheed complex, as well as domestic or sanitary waste from both Lockheed and Dobbins Air Force Base. But this is Nickajack Creek. It flows down Nickajack to the Chattahoochee River.
What do you foresee will happen if this is allowed to go on, this building on floodplains?
Well, as you can see right here, if we have continue to build on floodplains and we have heavy rains, then that stimulates erosion. And of course, erosion carries the clay and the earth into the river.
I'd say one of the worst examples I've ever seen of landowners taking advantage of rezoning influence and then having no respect whatsoever for the environment, the ecology, or the quality of life for people that ought to enjoy this river for many years to come.
Well, it's a constant harassment that we have whenever we try to park our cars and put our boats in. The children like to float down it. They get harassment from the police. They get harassment from the landowners around here. It just seems something ought to be done about it now.
Even though I-285 has brought ready access to the area, now the area around I-285 has been closed off to the public. This has been by far the most popular area, the area where we are, I-285 and the river.
So how do people get to the river now?
They trespass. It's a very bad situation. I'm sure the homeowners and developers in the area don't like it. There should be good public access to the river.
In the late 60s, an enterprising young man at Georgia Tech decided to start the Great Rambling Raft Race. And for a number of years, literally hundreds of thousands of people came out and loved being on the river.
Larry Patrick's Great Rambling Raft Races, for all their reputation of excess in terms of beer, illegal drugs, and wild going-ons, actually were introducing hundreds of thousands of people to the Chattahoochee River. When the raft races were going on, a lot of the buildings that are there now were not there. And so these people were traveling 9 miles of extraordinarily beautiful river. And so when the time came and people knew that the river was in peril, these people were outraged.
Watch it!
In the 1970s, particularly, those who loved the river and wanted to do something to save her for everyone focused initially on a particularly scenic section from Buford Dam to the city at Peachtree Creek, which is about 48 miles. They were focused on the main stem of the river and whether they could get protection for the river corridors. I was still in college, but had not really found my environmental voice yet at all. I was working more on social issues, poverty, mental illness, things like that, women's issues. But in the early 1970s, the Junior League of Atlanta brought together river rats and corporate folks and people who lived on the Chattahoochee. And the Junior League helped bring those people together in a very formidable way. Kay McKenzie is legendary in the work that she did.
We are very strongly in favor, though, of planned development. We feel like that we must know where we're going and how we're going from this time forward because our growth has been so rapid. Oh, actually, if you don't have it on tape, we ought to talk a minute about what really started the whole thing before there was Friends of the River. And that was that there were going to be 2 sewer lines to come down the river, one on each bank of the river. And we weren't talking about little bitty sewer lines. We were talking about big, mega, serious sewer lines. And of course, it would have destroyed the floodplains and the banks of the river and just been disastrous for the river. We were very lucky. The river was very lucky. There'd been no development that far out from Atlanta until just in the last probably 4 or 5 years. And then it was just booming.
Kay just took the ball and ran with it. I mean, she had not been involved in any conservation work, but boy, when she got involved, she was 100%. She was also very diplomatic. She had connections within the Atlanta community because of her family background, working with developers, state officials, conservation groups. She just moved very comfortably between all of them. She used to joke about, not going to college and graduating from college, and yet she did things that people with PhDs would do.
The Junior League had women like me, and I was not an expert in anything, but I have daytime time to go to county commission meetings and sit there all day. And a lot of the county meetings were in the daytime.
It was difficult because sometimes you'd find out about zonings 5 minutes before. All of these things were taking place so fast, everybody just all of a sudden said, oh my goodness, how do we get a handle on this? It was hard.
And we'd go sit in there, and if we saw something was getting bad and somebody was coming in with a development, we'd say, commissioners, we'd like to discuss that this is on a steep slope and you shouldn't develop here. And according to this land use plan that's been passed by the Atlanta Regional Commission, they're not supposed to do this. And so the commissioners would go, okay, she's caught on what we're trying to do here.
The Metro River Protection Act basically set up a land use plan for how development within 2,000 feet of the river would take place for a 48-mile stretch.
After the passage of the River Protection Act and the properties were turned over to the state, there was a national effort when the Chattahoochee National Recreation Area bill was introduced by Andrew Young, and Kay McKenzie and several of the people from Atlanta spent tireless hours up lobbying for the passage of the bill, which was successful and was passed in 1978.
It's a rare occasion when, within the city limits of one of our major cities, one can find pure water and trout and free canoeing and rapids and the seclusion of the earth the way God made it.
He loved the river. And I wasn't involved initially in getting him out to the river. I think Claude was really the instigator of that.
I met Rutherford Seidel and his wife Laura Turner Seidel
through an organization called the Georgia Conservancy, where I had worked. And they wanted to create a Riverkeeper organization. They were familiar with the group up on the Hudson River that had really started a lot of this movement, and they wanted to do something like that for the Chattahoochee. Laura was inspired to get involved because she grew up with Ted Turner as a father, Captain Planet. He, in turn, was inspired by Jimmy Carter in the 1970s to start working on environmental issues. And so in her own way, Laura did what she could while raising 3 children and addressing water quality issues in Atlanta and throughout the Southeast. She's another example of a woman environmental leader and a great defender of the Chattahoochee for a very long time. So I had been asked to help convene a group of people to talk about what might this new organization, this new Riverkeeper look like. I was in my early 40s, my sons were 8 and 12. I was looking for something to do, something to add value to my life, to their life, to the community. And I just decided to throw my hat in the ring. So the 3 of us started this thing with this wonderful template from the water keepers. You know, there'd be this one person who was sort of at the tip of the spear to lead the effort. And that effort would be educating kids and it'd be suing polluters. When we created Chattahoochee Riverkeeper, we knew we'd take a watershed approach to look at all the problems. At the same time, we knew the biggest problem affecting the river was the sewer system failure in the city of Atlanta.
The Chattahoochee River is protected by scores of state and federal laws by a number of government agencies. But a ride down the Hooch south of Atlanta will show you the protection isn't enough.
Raw sewage from Atlanta and the suburbs overflows into the river several times a month due to inadequate sewer treatment systems.
It's so bad, it was brown and it had like bubbles in some places where you could tell that it was really dirty.
In towns just south of Atlanta, the water is too polluted to use.
Condoms of toilet paper tangled in branches hanging over the river, foam in the water from wastewater treatment plants.
No new commercial sewage lines can be laid until 1998.
All of these problems are major things that have gone unchecked for years, and of course now our citizens in Atlanta, as well as our downstream neighbors, are paying for it.
I would not eat the fish. I would not even raft in the river.
The legislature has decided to impose a fine of $20,000 a day until the city stops polluting the river.
2 years ago, the Chattahoochee got a Riverkeeper.
A woman and an organization were taking on the big job of protecting the Chattahoochee.
Sally is one of 14 Riverkeepers on rivers across the country. The Riverkeeper has taken the lead in a lawsuit by communities and organizations downstream from Atlanta, a lawsuit to force Atlanta to stop polluting the Chattahoochee.
For decades, the city of Atlanta had not been a good steward to this river, had not been responsible, and had polluted the river to the extent that downstream communities could not use it and enjoy as the way this city can. It's everybody's river and it's everybody's problem.
In what's called a precedent-setting decision, a federal judge says yes. In a 45-page ruling, U.S. District Judge Thomas Thrash said, quote, Atlanta is dumping millions of gallons of inadequately treated sewage into the tributaries of the Chattahoochee River. To say that it is not causing violations of water quality standards would be to ignore reality.
Ultimately, the result of this decision by Judge Thrash will result in cleaner, safer streams in Atlanta.
Judge Tom Thrash called the settlement an immense accomplishment. Live overlooking the Chattahoochee River in the city of Atlanta, I'm Sally Sears, Channel 2 Action News.
Clean as can be. No, not clean as can be, but pretty clean. This goes straight down to form Peachtree Creek and then on to the Chattahoochee. We're maybe 12, 15 miles upstream here. 10 years ago, we were just getting started introducing people back to this, letting people know this was worth it and that the water was cleaner. It was 20 years ago, 25, when they put that new sewer trunk here that reduced the overflow so much that made spills much less likely. And ever since, the river's been getting cleaner and people have been enjoying it. It was always, what do we do about it? What do we do about it? And the answer never was particularly clear until Sally Bethea, the downstream cities,
And the impulse of the lawyers to hold the city accountable took over. And that was in the mid to late 90s. Sally was out there pulling samples out of the river. Sally was showing us how bad an idea it was to even get your feet in the river then, let alone get a splash of water in your mouth.
The city concentrates on gimmicks, it concentrates on PR, and it concentrates on hokey theatrics rather than the technical solutions.
She's talking about this demonstration by Atlanta sewer czar Dave Peters yesterday. He stirred what he called raw sewage into tap water and drank it.
Tastes wonderful.
She used data. She used the technique of getting people on the river, and she did it with some dispassion. I'm certainly not calling Sally not passionate, but she did it carefully and thoughtfully. Plus, she could really write. Her prose was very helpful. She was great at reminding everybody that what goes through Atlanta keeps on going downstream.
You have people on this river downstream who are fishing, they're boating, and they're trying to swim down in West Point Lake, only 60 miles downstream.
And Alan Jackson's huge country western hit showed us what the river looked like downstream in Noonan, Georgia, or close to Noonan. The river needed and Sally supplied an attractive, persistent face for gently reminding everybody, and then not so gently, that we really need to do this, that this river belongs to more than us.
She was a shy person growing up, and she was not a domineering force in our household or in really any arena outside of it until she became Riverkeeper and had the opportunity, I think, to grow into those leadership roles. She helped give the river an identity, a human one, and the river helped give her an identity. And those things converged and I think made both more powerful. You were a 20th, 21st century mom, meaning you were double timing. Essentially, you were at work 50 hours a week and you were at home with us as much as you could be. She's really good at connecting to people, and that cuts the core of who my mom is, whether that's a person who's a fisherman on the river or whether it's Shirley Franklin, the mayor of Atlanta.
I started running for office in '99. We decided to have just a big old party to kick off this campaign and started meeting people. And frankly, very few people wanted to talk to me. So I would sit around kitchen tables and coffee tables and in various informal settings. And there were three issues that nearly everyone raised with me. What are you going to do about traffic if you're elected for mayor? What will you do about education? And what will you do about water? Well, what was fascinating to me about that is that mayor, I had very little to do about traffic, no authority over education. And the only issue that had direct responsibility for was water. You had raised the issue significantly. People at the grassroots level knew that Atlanta had a water issue. So in some ways, I was just walking into an opportunity.
The task of implementing the extensive court-ordered fixes falls to Atlanta's newly elected mayor.
The water initiatives were by far the hardest thing I've ever tried to do in city government. It took daily attention. It took a stomach of steel.
You know, here I was managing a young, small organization. I mean, when we filed the legal action, our group was not even 2 years old. We had clear evidence of the violations. We had a small but competent team of lawyers and experts. We had downstream local government and businesses and property owners who were, we are tired of the city of Atlanta dumping on us. We want a clean river too. We want prosperity. And then we had people in the city who were saying, who's this little upstart environmental group that's raising my water and sewer rates? So, you know, we knew that the sewers were going to cost at least $2 billion. But then Shirley, very wisely, I came to learn, added on and created Clean Water Atlanta because the drinking water system was just as old and decrepit.
Atlanta is going to spend a lot of money We are going to impact the lives of many of our citizens.
Atlanta Mayor Shirley Franklin says the city is long overdue for repairing its decades-old sewer system. She announced a new initiative, Clean Water Atlanta, to get the city in compliance with federal law and make improvements.
Well, you were the face for the city, of course, and then for the sewer projects.
The bottom line is, we as Atlantans, as Georgians, don't have a choice to protect the river. We need to leave it better than we found it. And it's really been a political advantage for me, not a disadvantage. People laugh about me being the sewer mayor, but they remember what I'm doing. First year was sewers, the second year will be sewers, the third year will be sewers, the fourth year will be sewers.
Yes, yes.
And I talk about sewers a lot because it's important for us to know that what happens underground matters to our quality of life. People ask me why I wore a flower while I was in office. Part of it was to soften my image because I knew I had to make tough decisions. I remember a woman told me when I was running that she didn't really think I'd be the right person to be mayor. It was an African-American woman. She was probably in her 70s at the time. She said, I said, well, don't you think I'm tough enough? She said, no, you are tough enough. I don't think women should be that tough.
I had two strike female environmentalists back in the 90s. Nice people didn't file lawsuits. Nice environmental groups didn't do that. And so I had to toughen up. I will tell you, early on when we were planning and had organizing meetings for what became Chattahoochee Riverkeeper, I was told by a number of people, well, you should just be the board chair. You know, we're going to get someone else, a guy who's going to be the riverkeeper. And I was like, no. I had a major fear of failure, but I think I can do this. I'd been in the region dealing with people and environmental issues. I'd built a network, and I realized how critical relationships, of course, are, and building relationships, even with people you don't always agree with. The state and the feds, to some degree, had basically said since the 1970s, too expensive, can't do it, we'll just write off the river below Atlanta. They wouldn't put boat ramps on the river below Atlanta because they figured it was always going to be full of some kind of pollution, sewage, and be a public health threat. But I think we both, however it happened, or turned out to be can-do kind of people, like, well, I'm going to try it until it doesn't work. I doubt you shed any tears, but I sure did over a lot of trauma related to it. And then, mad, happy, real emotions up and down.
During my 8 years in office, the only thing I ever dreamed about was sewers. You'd ask me how it affected me emotionally, I would dream about sewers.
Atlanta finally came clean, drilling an 8.6-mile tunnel under the city to collect storm water and sewage and redirect it to a water treatment plant. Repair or replace more than 600 miles of sewer pipe, and disruptive as crews rip up streets.
I never considered myself a leader, but I had been exposed to people who were leaders. I always assumed that I would be the backup to the leader.
You have to work harder to make your voice heard as a woman, particularly 10, 20, 30 years ago, and to do it in a way that doesn't come off, as others would say, shrill or emotional or hysterical. You do it in a way a man would, but we're often characterized in a very different way, for sure. I certainly toughened up after Roy Barnes put me on the Georgia Board of Natural Resources. That was an experience.
Well, I remember the first day I met Sally in 2008. I came to interview with her, and you know, we sat down in her office, and I was so excited about this opportunity.
When I went and interviewed with her, I put on my suit, my tie, and I go sit in her office, and then she's in her t-shirt, she's got her feet propped up on her desk, and as soon as that happened, I knew that was the place for me.
You know, she's the type of person that I can call on the phone anytime and ask advice, or she may pick up the phone and give me her advice. And it's a sense of commitment and dedication to the mission that doesn't go away.
Today, there is so much cause for celebration for the Chattahoochee River, and particularly for the 70-mile section from Atlanta down to West Point Lake, the area that was polluted for so many decades.
People still talk about the river like it was 30 years ago. When I was growing up, you know, it's nasty, it's polluted. Atlanta's still dumping all the waste, and what they don't realize is how much cleaner it really is.
Sure, there's still problems sometimes after it rains with runoff from the city and that sort of thing. But when I see property owners wanting to build homes and businesses along the river, seeing it as an amenity, hearing that outfitters now see it as a place for their business to bring people in canoes and kayaks on the river. I tell you, it took a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of hard work by people like Shirley Franklin and so many others. Nothing is ever finished, though. We've got to stay on it.
I'd explain this to people even today, that the consent decree, as I understand it, was not just doing capital improvements. It was also upgrading the maintenance and
Very
operations.
important, yes.
And most people didn't understand that. You had to upgrade the training, upgrade the staffing, change the procedures. There was a variety of things in order to maintain it. And I remember one business leader said to me, "Aren't you glad that's over?" I said, "It's not over. Forever, the city has to.
That's exactly right.
Upgrade, innovate,
So true.
and maintain its water and sewer systems. Otherwise, we'll be back where we were."
I really love this part of the river. I really do. And by this part,
You know, I mean downstream of Peachtree Creek, downstream of the city. And as we get further downstream, it just becomes, I don't know, this place that I still feel like is something of a secret to a degree, because there's not that much river access, and people for so long just thought it's going to be horrible down here and we're just not going to go. And so it's like this secret spot in a way. They're incredible men and conservationists and environmentalists that have done so much. But as our former mayor, Shirley Franklin, said, women are the keepers of the place. Today, you've got people like Nataki Osborne-Jelks, along with Daryl Haddock, her group, West Atlanta Watershed, such a great partner in Proctor Creek, which probably was one of the most polluted tributaries to the Chattahoochee back in the 1990s. That stream has come a long way. On the Flint River, you've got Hannah Palmer, who has in the last few years really emerged as a wonderful leader to help with that river, which of course starts under the Atlanta airport, flows down to the Florida line and meets the Chattahoochee to become the Apalachicola. And then on the South River, a long-blighted river, Jackie Eccles is doing really quite phenomenal work to try to bring attention, get people out to see the potential and the beauty of that river. About 5 years after I retired from Chattahoochee Riverkeeper, I decided to find a place and take a walk every week in the same spot. And not surprisingly, that spot was a trail to the Chattahoochee in the national park. And so for a year or more, through the seasons, I walked this trail, stopped myself from my usual hurrying, and paid attention. And I was astonished by what I found, by the small things that I had missed in all my years whenever I was out walking. I just hadn't looked closely enough. And so I started taking notes. I had a journal. I started writing down stories. The pandemic hit, and I thought, I think I'll try to write a book. I wanted to reflect on what I was seeing in nature and how it was giving me so much comfort and solace, and help illustrate what it takes exactly to protect a river. And as I have gone out on a book tour, I've met a lot of young women who give me such confidence in our future and who inspire me that things will carry on and that this river has a bright future.
This is a sign from, it's washed down from East Point. It used to say, don't litter. So East Point's north of the airport. This washed through the airport's channels to get here and carried its message. I think Sally's book is really written for people like me and my generation who are starting to tackle problems that she started on in the early 90s. It's full of lessons that encouraged me, and also it was sort of a reality check for me about how long this takes and the level of engagement that it takes. You know, this woman had really blazed the trail and sort of created what a riverkeeper movement can look like, not just in Atlanta, not just in the South, but across the nation. Reading her book convinced me that there's just no amount of sweet talking and kind of friendly community engagement that can actually affect change. At some point, there has to be litigation, unfortunately. The stories that she tells about being a woman in the field, and often being overlooked, and often balancing the duties of caretaking, of being a mother, with the duties of caretaking for the river, I thought that was really inspiring.
Even if we never tell you, Charles and I owe so much to you, Mom, in terms of how to be a successful person in the world. And that's just not necessarily having to do with making money or being famous or status. It's about doing what's right. A lot of people in this world have desires and have beliefs and have visions, but they don't try to complete that vision. And you had both the courage, the work ethic, and the desire to do it. And you led through action, and also through a lot of words, but most importantly through action. And I really admire my mom for that. And I want you to know that. And I think this is a great time to honor her and her legacy.
Well, I want to thank you, though, because I think your leadership has made a huge difference, not just in improving the water, but getting the issues of water and the environment higher on the agenda of public officials. So
it's a huge team that did it, and thank you. But I learn, every time I'm with you, I learn something. I mean, I really do, not just facts, but, you know, I learn a lot from you, Shirley.
Well, it's
seriously.
Mutual.
So.
I'd love to. We can wrap this up. That was a perfect way to end the conversation.
I've done these a few times.
I remember one time there was a flood in the Atlanta area and a tennis ball factory got flooded, and there were tennis balls in every cove in West Point Lake.
I don't think there's a tennis ball factory in Atlanta, but I will tell you, I've pulled thousands out. I don't know if it's people with their throwing them to their dogs or whatever, but you know, wherever these tennis balls come from, maybe it is a factory, or you're teasing me probably.
That's what I heard.
Oh, really? Oh, that's too funny.
But you can't believe everything you hear.
So what I was able to actually really enjoy as a kid was the events that she'd put on where rock stars were showing up. So she did events with Eddie Vedder, she did events with Jackson Browne, Driving and Crying. Eddie Vedder to me was a total rock god when I was growing up, and she got his autograph for me. I regret taking that autograph to school and then selling it for $20.
Catesby Trillium wildflower. My glasses on. Catesby. Yeah. There she is. I love the way the petals, the pink petals are tucked back like that. So amazing. I'll tell you, the whole camera bit is something that I had to get used to and never liked, frankly. Oh my God, I hate being filmed.